We're sitting here today in the lovely Pioneer Museum here in Blanco, Texas. It reflects the history of Blanco, and we're going to be doing some oral history today. It's another of our oral history interview projects. I have the privilege of sitting here today to speak with T.D. Smylie and his wife, Leona. And my name is Martha Herden, and it's going to be my pleasure to do some interviewing and just having a lovely conversation with these two dear people. So, let me get started. My first question for you, T.D., is can you explain T.D. to me?
Well, T.D. is very simple. My father's name was Thomas David, and they couldn't think of a better one, so they used it on me.
When were you born?
Born on the 27th of July, 1943, in Corsicana, Texas. Beginning when I can first remember. I was about 5 years old, and we moved to the little town of Forsyth. That's in West Texas, near Big Spring. It was an oil field town. And Dad worked for the Shell pipeline.
What did that area look like? Did you bring a photo to show us what that area looked like?
Yes, I did.
All right. Was it as pretty as what Blanco is?
Nowhere close. Well, let's see, we had it. Did I give them to you? No, here they are. Can this show in your...
Oh, yes.
That is.
Okay. As you can see, these are 4 houses here, and this is nothing but prairie. Nothing. The only thing that will grow out there, besides rattlesnakes and coyotes, are sheep, goats, and oil wells.
How long did you live at this area?
We lived there from 1929 until 1937, and we moved to Blanco in 1937.
What was an average day for you as a young child there in that area? What did you do?
Well, we had lots of fun. We would, at the age of about 9 or 10, there was 2 other boys lived in the camp, and we would ride our bicycles, following trails like you see here, even sometimes sheep trails. And most of the boys, even at that age, were allowed to use .22 rifles. And we did a lot of shooting. Ammunition was cheap. A box of .22 shorts, as I remember, was about 10, 12 cents, something like that. During
that time, how hard was it to come by 10 or 12 cents?
Don't know. Dad was working. I wasn't.
Okay. What was life like there?
Totally different from Blanco. Different because the little town itself, there wasn't anything such as periodic dances, periodic parties, periodic street gatherings, you know, where people would get together. It was just a straight workaday thing. So the difference was just totally different. You got a friendly, and it was not that the people were unfriendly, they just didn't have time to fool you. They were busy working in the oil well.
And you tell me a little about your father's job and how that went.
Well, all I really know about it, and here again, I was 13 when we left there. He was chief engineer for the Shell pipeline. He ran the pump station and was responsible to see that all of the various wells that were producing and driving oil into the tanks, these tanks were then, oil was pulled from there and shipped through the pipeline, and that was his job.
Mm-hmm. What was your mother like?
Oh, she was a great lady. Great lady. She was quiet. Excellent seamstress. She liked to cook and was a pretty good cook. And I'd say she must have been real patient with me and my brother.
Well, T.D., I was just wondering, with such a wonderful smile, one would think you would never get in trouble. Did you ever get in trouble?
Never got caught.
Never got caught. Well, then that's a good way. That's a good way to do it. When you came to Blanco, could you describe that to us? What made the decision and how long it took?
Oh, well, Dad, although he had a very good job with the Shell pipeline, he wanted to go in business for himself.
Mm-hmm.
A strong feeling, but a bad decision. He, when we moved down here, his idea was to raise chickens. And he did. We raised bunches of them. And, but as time went on, the chicken business began to go bad. It did not work out. And so when I graduated from high school, I went to work in San Antonio, and not because I left, but shortly after I left, he folded the chicken business, and Mother went to Houston. He and Mother separated. Maybe they had some difficulty that I was not aware of. But anyhow, they separated. Dad went to work up in, Mother went to work one time in Houston, and then later he moved up into Pennsylvania and went to work for an oil company up there.
But how did he go, did you have some family, other family here that made you, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is how Blanco came about? I mean, what made him decide Blanco?
Well, other than the fact that he just wanted to go in business for himself. I guess he saw this place and liked it, and like many people today. They see the town, they like it, and he bought the property here.
Now, when you first got...
Since we're talking about the property and prices, he paid $1,200 for that piece of property down there on the river. Okay, on with your questions.
Quite a difference from the
I'd say, yeah.
Quite a difference.
Yeah.
When you first got to Blanco,
what
was your first impression of Blanco?
Well, the trees, the river, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, in school, really, I think you're not supposed to have much fun in school, but I had a lot of it anyway. Lots of fun in school, and all the kids were friendly.
How did you get to school every day?
Well, the buses weren't running.
Right.
Most of the time I walked from, down on the river and coming across the bridge down here, the new curved bridge, the old original bridge, across the bridge and then up to school. When the weather was real bad, then Mama or Dad one would take us to school and then pick us up. But that was the main way that we got to walk.
Was education, did your parents say that education was important? Or did they put an emphasis on education?
If they did, I don't remember it. They coached me a few times on my report card, but that was about the extent of it. So, not as they would normally today.
Now, with the chicken business that your father went into, how did you feel that business, while it was going, what impact do you think that had on the town of Blanco? How did it benefit it?
I wouldn't say that Blanco was affected one way or the other, and for this reason. Well, maybe it was to one aspect. Charles Christ was, he had the feed stores here, and Dad bought his feed through them. I don't really know that the amount that he bought, although it was quite a lot, it had any real impact on them.
How often did you come to town?
I don't remember. Other than school, I didn't have any reason to come to town.
Now, while you were going to school, of course there's other young boys and girls going to school, but was there a certain young lady that had pigtails that caught your eye?
Yeah, she did.
Could you tell us about her?
I was impressed.
You were impressed?
Very impressed.
Well, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I guess she was probably in about the 6th grade. I saw her, but I'm sure she didn't see me. But in a couple of years, she grew up, the pigtails were gone. Well, she did have freckles originally, but they faded. They're all gone now. And anyhow, she's the apple of my eye. And we were married in 1942. There was a war going on at that time, if you remember.
Well, would you do us a favor and introduce us to Leona?
Oh. Folks, this is my good wife, Leona. We were married, and when were we married, Mama?
October the 4th, 1942.
Yeah.
Very young. But it lasted.
Yeah, it stuck.
Leona, when did he catch your eye?
Well, at that time, you really, if you found somebody you thought was kind of cute, you didn't say much about it. You know, we were magical.
Yes. Now, TD, what are you showing us here?
We're showing you a picture of Leona and I, but now this is not quite the way we looked at the time we were married. This is a little bit later in life when I was in the Navy and I was stationed in Norman, Oklahoma. And we had an opportunity to get our pictures taken, and this is what we looked back then. I don't think you can see much change, can you?
No, not a bit, not a bit, not a bit. When you went into the military, did you get the Uncle Sam's calling letter? Or
Greeting, yes.
The greeting?
Oh, yes, yeah, I responded. Yeah. And I had to report to, seems to me it was, anyhow, it was Fort Sam Houston. It was Fort Dodge or something like that. Anyhow, to Fort Sam Houston. And they herded us all into the room for the briefing. We did our briefing, got our examination, got through. If you could stand up and walk straight, you were in. And all right, I could. And so at the end of the examination, there was a little office about the size of this room here. And you went through the door, 3 desks sitting in there. What do you want, son? Army, Navy, or Marines? Navy. And so that's how I came to be in the Navy.
Really?
At least I had the option.
Any particular reason that you chose the Navy?
Well, we didn't have an Air Force at the time, although I was very interested in airplanes. The Army, I couldn't see walking and carrying a backpack. That didn't appeal to me. The Marines, that was even less appealing. Their lifestyle wasn't the one that I wanted, so that's the reason I chose the Navy. Now, I will say that at the replacement center in Pleasanton, California, I was there after I got through boot camp. I was there for about 3 weeks. How they did it and why they did it, I don't know. But they pulled a goodly number of the men that were in my Navy company out, and they issued those rascals backpacks, Marine uniforms, and they became Marines.
Just like that?
Yeah, they had been in the Navy, but they changed them to Marines. So I was very fortunate that I didn't get chosen for that job.
TD, did you see some active duty overseas?
No, I didn't. 33 months in the Navy, and most of the time I spent in California. I was assigned to a Navy Air Training Unit.
What was your feeling about being in the military service?
I didn't have a lot of trouble with it that a lot of people did. It's a good thing. It wasn't for me insofar as a lifelong career, but it was all right. But that's the best I can say, all right.
Now, how did your sweetheart feel about that?
Uncle Sam didn't ask her.
So, what happened when he left?
Well, everybody went home. You know, the parents. I lived with my parents. Then, when he could, I went to him and lived with him in California.
Now, at along about that time, were some children coming along?
No, not until, let's see, I went into the Navy in March of 1943. So the first 3 months were spent in San Diego, then to Pleasanton, and then to a place called Hollister, where I was with this Navy Air Training Unit. At that time, she was able to come out and stay with me, and fortunately, she was with me most of the rest of the time I was in the service until our daughter was born in May the 31st of 1945. And so at that time, I was still in Hollister, California, and I was transferred from there to Chicago. And while I was in Chicago, Leona and our daughter Pat came up to live with me while I was in the Navy training school up there. And can you imagine? Here this young lady here making all of that trip with a don't know how old Pat was, but not very old.
3 months.
3 months old, my goodness.
But
Well,
she,
I would think at that time you did what you had to do because you wanted to be with him. Is that right?
Didn't even think about it, I guess.
Didn't give it a second thought. Kitty, I have a question for you. Just if you could answer it briefly. Although you didn't do active service, what is your opinion of the military in general, going through that period of time that we did for our country?
I think the average person in the military had probably a different attitude, patriotism, than a lot of them do today. Now, I don't draw that conclusion from having talked to these people, you know, current military people, some that were in the reserve, but the patriotism doesn't seem to be quite as strong today as it used to be.
Now, TD, I want to kind of take you back a little bit. I'd like to see if you could describe for us a little bit of what Blanco looked like back when you first got here, because for people our age, we don't remember that. All we can do is look at pictures. You have lived it. So if both of you could describe a little bit of what Blanco looked like in that period, we would love to hear about that.
Okay. Blanco essentially was the square and the stores around it. That was just about the extent of it.
What were some of the stores?
Well, let's see. The drugstore was there. There was a store called CS and CN. It's a little store that's right across the street from the bowling alley. Now, Roy Byers told me that CS and CN, it was run by Mary.
Miss Morgan.
May Morgan.
May Morgan.
Roy Byers told me that CS and CN stands for Common Sense and Common Necessities. It was ladies' apparel. So anyhow, that's
Lovely name.
Yes, it is. The west side, there was a barber shop, and there was a booze hall, and there was a theater, and I ran the theater in 1940 and 41. When I say ran the theater.
Now, let's just talk about that a minute.
Okay.
You just said you ran the theater. What did you do?
I ran the projector.
You showed films.
Oh, yes.
What type of films did you show?
Everything from Saturday afternoon westerns to Gone with the Wind, all of that good stuff. Worked from Friday at 6 o'clock until you run two movies and all the short subjects along with it. Saturday, you start at 1, run it till about 11. Sunday, you start at 1, run it till about 11. Monday, you start at 6, run 2 movies. So, and I made lots of money. I made $7.50 a week.
A week?
And for a school kid, that was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money. And where was the theater located at? If you could describe it.
Okay, on the east side, on the west side, the store on the corner, it was Lindemann's, you know where Lindemann's?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it was the building adjacent to Lindemann's.
All right.
And that's the theater, it was the theater.
What did it cost to get in to see a show?
Oh, 10 cents for the kids, 35 cents for the grown-ups. Yeah, not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Leona, did you get to go to some movies?
Oh, yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
How did you happen to find your way into doing that work?
Oh, to run
To do the movies?
To run the movies? Do you know? I can't remember. I think it was offered to me and I just said yes.
They needed someone to do it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How would you know to do it?
Really, it's not hard. It's not as complicated as setting up one of these things here.
So I guess that phrase, common sense, is what you used to learn how to do something.
Yes, common sense.
That's
That's all it takes is just show you how you thread the film through the machine and turn on the arc lights. See, in those days, the light that put the picture on the screen was made by electric arc, not by the bulbs as they use today. And so that arc, and you'd have to you start the arc. As soon as it got to going real good, you open the little door, I guess you'd call it, and the picture comes on the screen, and that's all there was to it.
My
It was
goodness.
fun.
It had to be.
Yeah.
Could you tell us the person who owned the theater? Did you get a chance to meet that person?
Didn't know the owner of the building proper. Name was Glasscock.
Glasscock.
WD, I think, but I'm not positive about that.
Uh-huh.
Anyhow, that was the person that built the structure and then set up the theater. The people that and actually were the managers of the theater. First was a Mr. Zimmerman, and the next was a Mr. Mills. Those are the two people that I worked for.
Were they strong taskmasters in you doing your job, or you just knew to do it?
They were the kind of boss I liked. They told me what to do, and I did it, and they didn't bother me.
Let you work alone?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
About how many people would attend the movies?
Don't really have a basis of count, but quite a few. Well, I guess you could say enough to keep the show open because it lasted for quite some time.
About how long?
Began in about 1938 or so, and it was still running when I left here to go to work in San Antonio in 1941. But I don't really know when they discontinued the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from 38 on, probably in the 50s.
As I sit here and I think about the dates that I'm hearing, I want to ask both of you, obviously you lived through the Depression. Could you describe to us just briefly what that was like? Because we, at our age, don't understand except economic times that we go through now, so as a comparison, could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, you want to comment about the Depression?
My sister was 12 years older than I, and she said, you don't know what the Depression was like, because I was very young.
Mm-hmm.
See, it was in 29, I think, and I was born in 25. So, but we lived on a farm and ranch, and we raised all of our own food and everything, and we never did really want for anything.
Right.
Didn't have money, but nobody else did.
And you, T.D.?
Well, as I mentioned, Dad, during the Depression, which I'm looking at years of 29 to say about 34, 35. See, Dad was working at that time for the Shell Pipeline.
Right.
Wages were good, and we really didn't feel the Depression because we had cash flow, and so I really can't give you how you feel during the Depression because it wasn't affected by it.
All right. What would you say, if you could name one important value that you feel your parents taught you, what would it be?
Well, they taught me that I was expected to work and make my own way. There was never really any discussion about it, but that's what was expected of you at that time. When you got out of high school, if you wanted to go to college, they would probably have helped as they could because, of course, you got to have some financial help then. But college was never encouraged. It was just you were just taught that when you get your education in high school, you're supposed to go to work and earn your own way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they told me.
And Leona, you, for your parents, if you could name one value.
Well, my parents were wonderful. They were very honest, and they always emphasized that. And I loved music, and they did everything that they could to help me with music, you know, with some lessons. And my sister bought an instrument, and they encouraged me. And I always felt like I was number 4, and I know I wasn't that special, but they always made me feel like I was special.
Well, now you see, Leona just jumped right ahead and asked my next question.
Mm-hmm.
The quality you admire the most. So now it's your turn, T.T. Your parents.
What do I admire the most?
And your parents.
Well, that's a pretty hard one to think of. Other than they never tried to drive me to do anything. You know, they let me go at my own pace, and I don't recall ever having any severe criticism. It was, you got to earn your own living in this world, so get after it. And I guess that's what they taught me.
Seems like you've done that. You were telling us that there was a time that you left Blanco for a while and went to San Antonio?
Yes.
Can you tell us just briefly about that?
Yes, I can. Have you heard of the NYA? Heard of the CCCs?
Yes.
Okay. The NYA, National Youth Administration, was to the younger teenagers, say 18 to about 21 or 22, that was a workforce that was financed by the government. They provided a place to stay, provided your food, a little bit of laundry, some degree of medical care if you were lucky. And so anyway, they paid a fantastic salary, $11.10 a month. Okay, so I went to San Antonio under the NYA and worked at Cali. That started my career there, and I worked there for some 33 years.
And then you retired.
Yes, in 1974.
And that means a return to Blanco.
Well, as so many people, I went to school here, went out in the world to make my living, didn't make my fortune, didn't make it, so I came back.
When you came back, which was obviously many years later, how did Blanco seem then to you?
Really, it hadn't changed as much then as it has in the past, I'm going to say 10 years. When I left, there was about some 600 people here. 30 years later, there was about maybe 1,200, something like that. So it didn't really grow. Not a lot of new businesses, as I recall. So pretty much the same, very little change.
How do you feel about the way Blanco is growing now? What do you see?
Well, I think Blanco is growing good. A lot of people are working to guide it in the right direction. Some may have their own agenda, but it's good. I'd like to see them place a little more emphasis on the historic, but we'll just have to see how that plays out.
When you came back to Blanco, were there some, and after retirement, were there any particular projects that you got involved here in the community with that had a great interest for you?
Well, yes. Let's see. Let me tell you about one before I left. When I was in high school, they were building what was originally the high school building on the old campus.
Yes.
So, okay. They built that in 1939, 1940. And they hired a bunch of the high school boys to help with that. I worked on that. In the 80s, I was involved a great deal with the school board in the design and the building of the high school that's on the Rocky Road.
Right.
The the middle school now. Let's see.
Now, let me get
Yeah.
I want to stop you there. What got you involved in that particularly? Because I've done a little bit of reading about you.
Oh,
And it seems like that you went up and took a good look at the school.
I did.
What was going on?
What did we do? Okay. Well, back up just a little bit. I read in the Blanco paper that the school board had bought a piece of property at a price that I thought was just outlandish. So I visited the school board and listened to what was going on. Come to find out that, well, maybe they need this school after all. And so, Larry Minke was superintendent at the time, and he asked if I would work with the school board and make a study and report it, to what our findings are, so they could use it to sell the idea to the public. This is the pros and the cons of the condition of the school, which we did, and so that report was given to the school board October '88, I think, in the fall of '88. Anyhow, the summary of that is in the fall of '88 school bulletin. So that'll pretty well cover that report.
Okay. Another project that you got involved in here in Blanco, because you strike me as someone that needs to be pretty much busy and doing things.
Well, we built the Gym of the Hills.
Can you talk, Gym of the Hills, can you describe that to us?
Well, yes. That building, many people don't know it, but that building was, other than the concrete foundation and the sheet metal on the roof, that building was built by men of WRP. Everyone on the building crew was 70 years old or older. And I don't know that many people know about that.
How long did it take?
Not real sure. Just roughly 18 months, something like that.
So even at 70, everybody was still ready to work?
They did work. They worked real hard. They were very, very ambitious and energetic men. Good men to work for.
What did you see the Gym of the Hills, the benefit that it could do for the community? What did you see it could do?
Well, there really wasn't any other place in Blanco where a civic organization, meetings and so forth, could be held at the time, and I don't know if there is any place that would really compete with it today. Maybe the west side of the square, I don't know. But that was the biggest advantage. It offered a place, meeting place for pretty large gatherings.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You know, T.D., as we're sitting here today in this extremely historic building that truly shows so much history of Blanco,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, as I've done a little more reading, did you have another little bit of things you got involved with in Blanco that talked about history?
Well, let's see. I was a member of the Historic Commission, wrote the city ordinance that governs the Historic Commission.
How did you go about drafting that? What were you basing that on?
Well, there was an earlier ordinance, but what I really did was I updated it, and I looked at ordinances from about 3 or 4 other towns and extracted from them the parts that I thought would be best fitting for Blanco. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we incorporated in there.
Are you still involved with the Historical Commission?
No, I graduated from that.
As watching the Historical Commission develop, are you pleased to see what they've been doing here in Blanco?
That camera's looking right smack at me. Okay, yes and no. I think that some of the things that have happened are really not in keeping with the instructions that the people in Austin, that would follow the guidelines of the people in Austin. Sometimes I think they kind of cut the corners on it. But that's okay, because I guess the changes is a part of progress.
If you could have your ideal view of what the square could be preserved as, what would it be?
Well, I think that it would probably, and this would be only one person's opinion, I think the closer it can stay like it is, the closer it is to reflect the true history of the building.
What do you, if you could have a crystal ball, mm-hmm. None of us do, but if you could, just for a moment, and look at Blanco, and let's say we're 10 years, 15 years sitting from now, what do you foresee Blanco looking like and being like?
The next 5 years, I don't really expect to see a whole lot. The next, you'll have buildings like this new motel, like the cement works and so forth, mm-hmm. The house over near the cemetery. You'll have things like that go up, I think. 10 years, I think the population will probably begin to grow more then, because if the current forecast for world population growth is accurate, this whole part of the country is going to grow tremendously. Yes. Did you see it in the paper where we're going to have break 7 billion next year.
I actually saw on the news that the top 3 states in the country for growth and economic development, and at the top of the list was Texas.
You bet, and we'll see a lot of people coming in.
We shall.
Yes.
Judy, what advice would you give for young people these days, how to live their life?
You mean when they get out of high school?
Yes, sir, out of high school.
Well,
Knowing that all that they're surrounded around with technology and computers, what is one simple piece of advice you would give them?
well, it's not original, but I think it pretty well sizes the situation up. And maybe you've heard it. The good Lord, in His infinite wisdom, has created us with 2 ends, one to sit with and one to think with. Your success or failure is going to depend on which end you decide to use the most. With that advice, there's one other place where the students of Blanco High School can find all kinds of advice on what they should do.
Yes.
Okay?
I have a child who graduated from Blanco, and I can tell
Did they
you
get a copy of this?
Oh yes, every year the parents got a copy of this, and they finally figured out a way to have the children look at it and return it. If they look at it and return it,
Okay.
they get a grade. If they don't, they get a grade of 0.
Oh, okay.
So they do look at it.
Yeah, okay. Well, this will give them all kinds of advice from the kiddos that have graduated from this school, and this is what they have learned when they got out into the world.
Leona, what advice would you give for young people?
Well, everybody is an individual, and you really you don't know what everyone is thinking, but I think follow what they like best, what they like to do, and what they do best. And of course, I encourage education. And you really need to go out and see some of the world. So I wouldn't say leave Blanco, but it would be kind of hard to stay here. So you do need to be educated, and then you can always come back.
What did you tell your children? What was something that you told your children to do? Once they were out of school, ready to hit the world, what were you telling them?
Well, I don't remember having such a conversation with my daughter. She graduated and then went to Trinity for a couple of years. She did not finish Trinity. She got an MRS there. Okay. But my son, I very clearly remember my conversation with him. He graduated from Jefferson in San Antonio. And I told him that his college's money is available. It's paid for. And now I expect him to go up there and apply himself. You don't have to work all the time, but be sure that your studies come first. And I told him that essentially you're working for me. As long as your grades are good, your college is paid for. If your grades start down the line, then it's time for you to go out and get a job. Do you know what? He took the money that we had set aside. He went through college. He had money left over. So he studied, and we gave him the allowance.
How many grandchildren have you been blessed with, both of you?
Well, let's see. 3 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren.
5 great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
I bet they are the light of your life.
Oh, yes, they are. Yeah.
I came across a phrase that I wanted to ask you about in my research on you. I did a little bit of research.
Oh, okay.
And I really want you to explain this to me. The most important thing a person can leave in this world is their name. Can you tell me who said that?
You bet. Her father.
Leona?
Well, my father.
Yeah. That's right.
I guess, that's where, I'm sure it was heard before, but, or said before, but he emphasized.
But that says a lot of it, doesn't it?
What did you take from that?
Well, I don't know, I guess I live by example.
And the example being?
My parents.
Exactly.
They were good people, really were.
And your parents, good people?
Yeah, they were good. I think they had their differences, obviously, or they wouldn't have split up. But they were okay. Yeah, they were good people. They always treated me good and fair. I guess they let me run wild, but I wasn't really.
Do you think with you being a Thomas David Smylie Jr., I'm correct?
That's correct.
Do you feel like that you are like your father?
Would you direct that question to her?
No, I'm directing it to you, please.
Well, yes and no, but not so much.
Okay.
Dad was actually born much too late. He'd have made a good man in the more than 1830, 40, 50s, because he was a mountain man. He liked the outdoors. He spent his last 25 years in Alaska. Loved it.
Loved it.
Yeah, because it was really a wild country then.
Could
Not so much now.
could both of you, sorry for interrupting you, could both of you tell us your family names? Leona, what was your original family name?
My mother and father's last name, Hohenberger.
And yours?
Smylie.
All right.
I'm of German descent.
And you?
Well, Heinz. All kinds really, but primarily Scotch and Irish. Yeah. I have in one of my history books at home, what is supposed to be the Smylie crest. I don't know whether that's the truth or not, but since I don't have anything better, I'll say it is.
TD, as we're sitting today and we're winding up our interview, which has been just truly a treasure of both of you, we're sitting here today surrounded by so much history. What are you taking from this room, this building, and from, most importantly, this interview?
Well, I enjoyed it immensely. I really did. And I'll always remember it.
What would you like to see when it's looked at in the library by someone 20 years from now? What do you think they'll think about T.D. Smylie and Leona Smylie?
Well, if they do that, I'd certainly be pleased to know that somebody took a look at this history and really found out, looking at it, they really enjoyed it.
T.D., I'm a little bit younger than you. If you could tell me one thing to try to live my life by, what would you suggest?
Well, let me see. One thing. Sure, a lot of them aren't there.
Now remember, I'm getting older.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would say that you should live to do what you want to do, as long as it doesn't interfere or adversely affect somebody else. Because that way you enjoy your life. And the reason I say that is that's what I've done ever since I got out of high school. Maybe that's my problem. I've done pretty much what I want to do and enjoy the life. And that would, you'd live a very happy life if you
It
could do
doesn't
that.
say, well, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you have many regrets, either one of you.
Not a one.
And that is a true blessing.
And this is the least of my all regrets.
Well, and I was going to say, as I've listened to you talk about Leona, I'm gathering that it was truly love at first sight.
Yeah,
Must have been
not first
something
sight.
going.
Not really at first sight, because she was a little young.
But she caught your eye.
She caught my eye. I don't know that I did hers, but she did catch my eye. And she's been a perfect wife.
Has he been a perfect husband?
Well, you're not taping this, I hope.
Has he been a perfect
I
husband?
hate to tell anybody how good he has been.
Well, go ahead, tell us.
Well, he is just wonderful. It's hard to believe that I could be that blessed and that fortunate.
See?
You can't say anything better than that, can you?
Can't do any better than that.
TD, today's my first time to meet you. I feel like I've known you forever.
Well, good. That's
And
good.
it's been a true pleasure to sit here and talk with you, to find a little bit about your history. I think you've left a great impression on Blanco. I think you will continue to leave a great impression on Blanco. You were not a person that just sat. You came here, you got involved, and you have truly contributed to this town, both of you. And I thank you dearly, and God bless both of you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.